Hey everyone, Zion over here from Nintendo Life, and today we're here to share with you our review of Yu-Gi-Oh! Early Days Collection on the Nintendo Switch. Now, this review was originally written by Jess Elizabeth Reed for NintendoLife.com, but was reworked into this video by me. One of the most striking elements of Yu-Gi-Oh! Early Days Collection, which celebrates the 25th anniversary of the card game, is the sheer number of Yu-Gi-Oh! Video games that came out between 1998 and 2004. The Early Days Collection includes 14 games just from Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance, some of which have previously never been released outside of Japan. Over half the games in the collection belong to the Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Monsters series, and despite increasingly convoluted names, you have Duel Monsters, Duel Monsters 2, Dark Duel Stories, Duel Monsters 4, Battle of Great Duelists, The Eternal Duelist Soul, Duel Monsters 6, Expert 2, Worldwide Edition, Stairway to the Destined Duel, The Sacred Cards, and Rechef of Destruction. Most follow a similar formula of beating duelists in battle to unlock new areas and cards. The first video game in the series was actually released before the official Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game, so its rules are based on the manga instead. As the Duel Monster series progresses, the in-game dueling rules begin to slowly resemble the real-life trading card game more closely, but it isn't until the fifth entry, the Eternal Duelist Soul, that we see a full alignment with the actual card game rules. Then we revert to a simplified version of gameplay in the last two games, the Sacred Cards and Rechef of Destruction, which also added an RPG element that allowed us to walk around an actual environment as we dueled our way through town. For anyone who's played the official card game, the most baffling mechanical difference in some of the Duel Monsters games might be the alignment systems, where monsters of one type are super strong against another. We were surprised when a normal summon with 300 attack points could automatically defeat our 7-star 2-sacrifice summon with 2500 attack points just because it had a thunder alignment against our own monster's water alignment. To put it bluntly, the traditional Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game is much more strategically engaging than the chimeras present in many of the Early Days collection. We'd argue that the card game hits its full stride shortly after many of these titles were released, and then overcomplicated itself into oblivion a few years later on, but we don't have to get into that now. There is a simple joy in collecting as many cards as possible, just to revel in how cool the artwork is, but as tactical games, which many of these titles bill themselves as, there's not too much to entertain. That is with the exception of two later games included in the collection, Yu-Gi-Oh! World Championship Tournament 2004 and 7 Trials to Glory World Championship Tournament 2005. They offer a strategic experience much closer to the actual card game. Gameplay still mostly involves challenging others to duel, but collecting new cards and putting together decks is so much more engaging since we actually got to purchase and open packs in these ones. While we respect the commitment to the original gameplay, the user interface for much of the collection feels clunky and overwhelming. Getting through a single turn in many of the games was often tedious, let alone trying to change what was in our deck. This improved a little over the years, but not by much. A major criticism for many of Konami's Yu-Gi-Oh! Titles when they originally released was that they didn't do much to teach series newcomers how the card game actually worked. And that remains true with this collection as a whole. On the one hand, many of the ready-made target audience are probably those who either played the card game or the video games themselves previously. Yet we can't help but feel that the collection might have been a great opportunity to introduce the Yu-Gi-Oh! Card game to a new group of players. Now, of course, not every game in the collection is duel-centered. The Yu-Gi-Oh! Series has inspired numerous game variations throughout its history, aside from its massively popular card game. Dungeon Dice Monsters is based on a board game of the same name, and without having any previous experience with Dungeon Dice, we found this one particularly difficult to understand. It felt like a game that could be really interesting if there wasn't such a difficult learning curve. Destiny Board Traveler, seemingly Konami's take on a Mario Party type game, was disappointingly hard to jump into as well. The art style is really cute, but the in-game text is outrageously difficult to decipher. By the time we figured out how the mechanics worked, we weren't really having any fun. Meanwhile, Yu-Gi-Oh! Monster Capsule, which originally only released in Japan, offers a twist on turn-based tactics in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Universe that's both whimsical and easy to understand. With our friends being magically transformed into dolls, we're tasked with collecting and training monsters in capsules. Fights unfold on a 2D battle map where our monsters face down various opponents in a goofy chess-like showdown. It certainly isn't the best tactical game of all time, but it makes for a worthwhile addition to the collection. The developer of this package, Digital Eclipse, included some quality of life elements as a whole that tie everything together rather well. These include the ability to save at will, tweak gameplay rules like removing deck limits, and the ability to rewind time. These features help take the edge off the already mentioned interface frustrations for those older games, but not enough to remove our suffering altogether. What we did love was the preserved box art and original instruction manuals for each game. We opted to play each title with a lovely background border behind the game screen, but players can notably adjust the screen size, filter, and border using the collection's universal pause menu. The Yu-Gi-Oh! Early Days collection stays true to its sources and brings a little piece of history into the modern age. Unfortunately, dull mechanics and often unwieldy UI plague many of the games in the collection, just as they did when they first released. Although, amidst 14 titles, it would be impossible not to have a couple winners. For us, Monster Capsule and the 2 World Championship Tournament titles shone through beautifully. Although the included games are certainly imperfect, we recognize the intentionality behind the collection's curation and feel that it's an excellent time capsule of the origins of the iconic Yu-Gi-Oh! Series. We here at Nintendo Life give Yu-Gi-Oh! Early Days collection on the Nintendo Switch a 7 out of 10. Now, like many of you probably watching this video, I played and collected a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards when I was a kid. I was never very good at it. I learned from the video games and kind of played with friends, which honestly now kind of makes me think, I probably actually didn't play the correct way when I was a kid. And I've learned a bit as an adult. I had a Crystal Beast deck at one point, which wasn't very good, but it was fun. And it's been a while, though, since I've played. And one thing I really like with this collection, though, which is not really the most uncommon thing for a retro release anyways, is the rewind feature. And the reason it's so important here is because when you're trying to get your bearings with a board game or a card game, it's very easy to make mistakes. And when you're playing in person with friends, usually when you're in the learning phases or the first few times playing, it's really cool when your opponent lets you take things back if they re-explain like, hey, actually, if you do this, I'm going to be able to knock you out next turn. Or actually, if you did this instead, you'd be able to, take down my life points pretty significantly. There are so many times already where I've been playing and I forget the mechanics of Yu-Gi-Oh! And I attack and I forget how the game plays, and the attack that I did doesn't deal as much damage, or it flat out just doesn't work. And rather than waste a turn entirely, you can rewind and you can take another stab at it. And since these games don't really have tutorials from what I've gathered either, I haven't played all of the games in this collection, Jess played much more than me, but it's nice to have that rewind feature just so you can take things back. Obviously, you could never do this in a competitive state, even in person. Your opponent's not going to let you take things back. That defeats the the point of the game, I suppose. But in the video game here, it's nice to be able to go back and rewind time and try things again. So let us know in the comments down below if you grew up with any of these games, if you imported any of them and tried to play them in Japanese. I definitely saw them in pre-owned stores back in the day and didn't pick them up. I always stuck with the English ones, but it's cool to have English translations of all these games now. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more videos like this, then why don't you summon that subscribe button and then ring that notification bell to be notified whenever we put up new videos like this. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you to Jess for playing all 14 games that are bundled in with the Yu-Gi-Oh! Early Days collection. I'm Zion from Nintendo Life. Stay safe out there, and we will see you all next time.